Have you ever just looked in the mirror and wondered, what incredible biological journey led to, well, you? Today, we're going to unpack that exact story, your unique genetic story, to figure out what makes you, you. I mean, really think about that for a second. Out of all the billions of people on this planet, there has never been and there will never be another person exactly like you. Sure, you might have your mom's eyes or your dad's laugh, but that entire package deal, that's a total one-off. So how in the world does biology pull off this magic trick every single time? Well, the secret is all in your genes, and it's so much more than a simple 50-50 split from your parents. Think of it more like a high-stakes genetic card game, where the deck gets shuffled in a way that creates a hand that has never been dealt before and never will be again. To really understand this genetic shuffle, we got to start at the source, right down at the cellular level. This is where it all happens, where life itself is constantly mixing and matching the building blocks of our very code to create this incredible variety. Okay, so to get this, we just need two key ideas down. Most of the cells in your body, your skin, your heart, everything, are what we call diploid. That just means they have two full sets of chromosomes, one set from each parent. But the reproductive cells, so sperm and eggs, they're different. They're haploid, meaning they only carry a single set. And the process that makes these special haploid cells, that is the absolute key to this whole story. That process is called meiosis. And listen, don't worry about memorizing all the phases. Just get this picture. A single diploid cell goes through 2 rounds of division. But here's the cool part. Before it splits, the chromosomes from each parent cozy up and literally swap pieces of information. This is called crossing over. This is the shuffle. And the result? You end up with 4 totally unique haploid cells, each one with a brand new mix of genetic code. You can really see how special meiosis is when you put it next to its cousin, mitosis. Mitosis is basically a biological copy machine. It just churns out identical cells so you can grow and heal. But meiosis is a creative engine. Its entire job is to create genetic diversity for reproduction. So you see, they're 2 completely different processes with 2 very different but equally important jobs. Okay, so we've got these unique reproductive cells, each carrying a freshly shuffled deck of genes. Now let's look at how those genes actually play out, how they set the rules for the game that decides the traits that we can actually see. Right, so for any given gene, let's say eye color, there can be different versions. We call these versions alleles. You get one allele from each parent. The best way to think of it is like flavors of ice cream. The gene is ice cream, but the alleles are the different flavors, like chocolate, vanilla, or strawberry. This little grid here is a Punnett square, and it's basically a simple way to figure out the odds in genetics. So let's pretend big B is the dominant allele for brown eyes, and little b is the recessive one for blue. Now, if both parents happen to carry that recessive little b allele, even if they both have brown eyes themselves, this grid shows us all the possible outcomes for their child. And as you can see, there's a 1 in 4 shot that the child gets 2 little b's and ends up with blue eyes. It's all just a game of probability. But of course, genetics is rarely that simple. Sometimes both alleles show up at full strength, like with AB blood type. We call that codominance. Other times, they kind of blend together to create something in between, which is incomplete dominance. And then you have sex-linked traits, which are carried on the X or Y chromosome. That's why some things like colorblindness are way more common in guys. All right, now it's time to zoom out. Because the story isn't just about your genes in a vacuum. It's about how those genes talk to the world around them. It's the classic dynamic duo, nature and nurture. You know, a lot of traits like your height or skin color aren't controlled by just one gene. They're polygenic, meaning lots of genes are all working together. And when that happens, you get this continuous spectrum of possibilities, which is why we see this classic bell curve. Most people fall somewhere around the average height, and the extremes, super tall or super short, are much less common. And this, right here, is such a huge concept to grasp. Your genes are not some fixed, rigid blueprint for your life. It's way better to think of them as a script. And the environment? The environment is the director, influencing which parts of that script actually get read and performed. And the real-world examples of this are just wild. The temperature of a turtle nest can literally decide if the babies are male or female. The pH of the soil can change a hydrangea's flower from pink to blue. A bee's diet is the only thing that determines whether it becomes a worker or a queen. The environment is constantly interacting with genes, and our genes are listening. So, since we know how incredibly complex this genetic blueprint is, the next logical step for humanity was, of course, learning how to read it. And that brings us to the amazing power of DNA analysis.
Believe it or not, the DNA of any two people is more than 99% identical. But it's in those tiny differences where all our uniqueness is found. Even just a single letter changing in the genetic code, like you see here, this G flipping to an A, that can be a unique marker. And our technology today can spot these differences with pinpoint accuracy. One of the most famous applications of this is DNA fingerprinting. By looking at specific, highly variable parts of our DNA, scientists can create a unique banding pattern for every person. It's like a genetic barcode. In this example here, you can clearly see the bands from the crime scene DNA are a no-go for suspect 1, but they are a perfect match for suspect 2. I mean, this technology has totally changed the game for forensics.
So, think about this journey. We've gone from simply being the product of our genes to being able to read them, and now to actually rewriting them. This last part is all about the incredible power and the massive responsibility that comes with biotechnology.
I mean, the potential here is just staggering. We are using gene therapy to fight diseases like cystic fibrosis that were once a death sentence. We're engineering crops that can survive droughts, which is crucial for feeding our planet. We've even taught bacteria how to be little factories that produce life-saving insulin. This is stuff straight out of science fiction, happening right now.
But with all that incredible power comes some really big questions. Let's just take GMOs, or genetically modified organisms. The benefits are huge. More food, better nutrition, you name it. But it also forces us to ask some tough ethical questions. What are the long-term effects on the environment? Is this technology available to everyone, or just a few? And what about consequences we can't even predict yet? There really are no easy answers here.
So, this is where we land. Your genetic code is this incredible, one-of-a-kind story, written and edited over millions of years of evolution. But now, for the first time in the history of life on this planet, we're the ones holding the pen. We now have the ability to edit that story ourselves, and that leaves us with a profound question. What kind of authors are we going to be?